Welcome to the Probate Nation. My name is Richard Ruddy. Selling real estate from an estate or a conservatorship presents a host of challenges. This is especially so as you try to maximize the sales price, but avoid the cost of holding and maintaining a property for months on end. Over prior shows, we have interviewed both realtors who list and sell real estate, as well as cash buyers who buy such real estate. Tonight we tackle a different method of selling real estate, namely through an auction. Our guests are professional auctioneers, and they will explain what properties are good candidates to be auctioned, the advantages of an auction, how an auction is marketed, what happens on auction day, and much more. Our first guest is a graduate of George Mason University and the Mendenhall School of Auctioneering. She is a national champion collegiate debater, a licensed auctioneer, and a realtor. Since 2005, she has worked at the Transom Fox Northern Virginia team, where she is both an auctioneer and the company's finance manager. Our second guest is a fourth-generation auctioneer, joining A.J. Billick and Company Auctioneers full-time in 2006. He is a graduate of the University of Baltimore School of Law, Elon University, and the Missouri Auction School. And he is a member of the Greater Baltimore Board of Realtors and the Maryland and National Association of Realtors. Please welcome Susie Murphy and Charles Billick. Guys, welcome and thanks very much for appearing via Skype. So we're delighted to have you on the show today. You know, Charles, I want to start with you. Let's kind of get the big picture. How is property, generally, real estate, typically sold?
First off, Richard, thanks very much for having me on. Real estate is sold in any number of different fashions, especially in conjunction with an estate. So that may be the personal representative or the family selling it directly themselves. They may choose to engage a traditional listing agent or a realtor to help them with that sale. Or in our case, they may choose to auction the property itself, which provides an array of incentives and efficiencies.
So interesting. I think when people first hear the word auction, they think that we're selling the property at the courthouse steps like in a foreclosure. Is that what auction's about?
There certainly are those auctions, but that's not the bulk of how we handle our sales. There's any number of different types of sellers out there and any number of different types of circumstances, so that will lead to any number of different sales methods. The bulk of our sales are handled on site at the property with the buyers having an ability to get access, have contractors look at it, have a home inspector look at it, and really get a more full array of due diligence information than that preconceived notion of the sight unseen courthouse sale may offer.
Okay. Susie, I'm going to turn to you though. So as Charles has kind of narrowed down how we would use an auction, tell me, what types of properties are good candidates to be sold at auction?
So anyone that wants to sell a property in a time-definite period, auction's for you. There is a date at which everyone's going to bid, and you're going to know the results right then. And also, a really great reason is we sell as is. So there's no additional out-of-pocket money for carrying costs for the property or maintenance or those kind of things. You just sell it in the condition that it's in today.
So to take the other side, what candidates are not good, what properties are not good candidates for an auction? If there are.
So if, I mean, as an auctioneer, I'd like to say, bring them on. But in all seriousness, if you have a number which is on the upper edge of the market and you don't have any reason to sell right now, like you can wait 6 months, a year, 2 years, that wouldn't be an auction. Okay,
good. Well, Charles, I'm going to come back to you for a second. Let's talk, and I'm going to come back to both of you. I want to talk about some of the, what are some of the advantages of an auction? So Charles, let me start with you. Just give me a couple of advantages you see that an auction offers in trying to dispose of real estate.
Sure, and I think Susie hit some of these items, but it's a streamlined sales methodology. So again, it's as is, non-contingent, and very cut and dry process with a date certain for the seller so that not having to make those repairs that may be necessary in conjunction with a traditional financing or inspection contingency is one great advantage of the auction that you won't have. Additionally, you have a higher deposit threshold for the auction itself, which helps shore up the nature of the buyer pool in general. And again, you're establishing market price from the buyers themselves. So rather than relying on your own impression of the price or a traditional list price, you're really relying on the market to set itself, which especially in the current context where the market is very warm, is extremely advantageous for sellers.
So Susie, I'm going to come back to you. What are some of the other advantages that you see that auction offers in trying to dispose of real estate?
Yeah, Charles made some really good points. And to capitalize on that, the competitive nature is what really brings the market price higher for the seller. And also in auctions, the terms are public. The contract is known ahead of time. It's as is, whereas, no contingencies. Everybody comes in on an even playing field.
Very good. And so, Susie, I'm going to stay with you for a second, though. What are some of the disadvantages that an auction presents, if any?
I would say the only thing that it could be is if you have to be contingent on financing as a buyer, and you are not pre-qualified, that may prevent you from bidding and being able to close, because at an auction, once you sign the contract, you are expected to close.
And you make a commitment by putting a pretty sizable down payment in order to do so.
That's correct.
Charles, I'm going to come back to you now. Let's talk about the listing agreement, and I'm going to come back to Susie after this. Let's just kind of break down. Is there a minimum price in the listing agreement?
For most auctions, there is a minimum price, and there's a couple of different ways that that can function. In most instances, you would have what's called a confidential reserve price. So that's the price that theoretically under which the sellers will choose not to trade the property. It's important to note that really at any instance, the sellers can choose to or not to sell the property. So that reserve price is more of a guideline than it is a hard and fast rule. Again, where the market establishes itself, the buyers are going to tell us what it's worth, and hopefully that's in excess of a reserve price. But irrespective of that number, the seller has control. The instance where there wouldn't be a reserve price is what's known as an absolute auction, which is a no reserve, no minimum auction that the property sells to the highest bidder. And then there's also a third option, which is a bit of a hybrid between the two, which is to sell the property to the highest bidder over a certain number, which functions as a disclosed minimum price. And that may be a really good strategy, especially for those properties that may have been traditionally listed before, and the sellers have decided to move forward with an auction that disclosed minimum price presents a really clear picture for the buyers that here is our minimum. If you're anywhere above that minimum price, you should do your due diligence and participate.
Okay. Now, is there, what type of, apart from the minimum price, are there any sort of special terms that normally get incorporated into a listing agreement to auction real estate?
So partly yes, in conjunction with the listing agreement, and then also within the contract of sale itself. So the items that would be in our standard listing agreement and our contracts of sale would be when the adjustments are done for real property taxes and water, as an example. That with most traditional listings, those are items that are adjusted as of the date of settlement, whereas with the auction, those are adjusted as of the date of sale. Other items to consider are certainly what the fee is going to be in conjunction with the auction, what the marketing expenses may be, and what other expenses are going to be attributable to the buyer or to the seller. So again, with an auction, the buyer is going to be responsible for all recording and transfer taxes, which are items that are normally split with a traditional listing, and those would be outlined in both the listing agreement and the contract of sale.
Okay, Susie, I'm going to come back to you now. Continuing with the listing agreement, how quickly is the property typically listed once you sign the listing agreement?
Once we sign the listing agreement, we like a good, before auction day, it's at least probably about 30 days.
30 days, okay.
We start marketing the property about a week after signing the listing agreement. We put together a pretty comprehensive diligence package that people can download from our website. You know, pictures, terms, all kinds of things. And then about 30 days, 45 days later, we're going to have the auction.
And now, how quickly does the buyer, Susie, need to close once the auction is complete?
That's a really good question. And every property is different. So I encourage anyone out there wanting to bid, be sure you look at the terms and conditions for that particular property. I would say closings range anywhere from 30 to 60 days.
Okay. And Susie, is there a minimum deposit required before bid or with a successful bidder?
Absolutely. So here again, it depends on each property. And I could give you an example of one that I have tomorrow, of an auction tomorrow. So in order for folks to come to bid, tomorrow they'll bring their ID and a cashier's check for $50,000. Then if the total deposit due will be 10% of the total purchase price within 5 days of ratification of the contract.
Okay, good. So we have serious people if they're showing up a $50,000 cashier's check. So.
You betcha.
Okay, now let's talk. Susie started to talk about marketing. I'm going to switch back to you, Charles. What type of marketing is typically done for a real estate auction?
So we're going to utilize all those same marketing venues and more that a traditional listing agent might. So we're certainly going to utilize the multiple listing service, and that has some additional assets with respect to syndicated sites like Realtor.com, Zillow, or Trulia. We've become very highly engaged with social media, not only the free or organic posts, but also promoted posts. So those advertisements that folks see in their Facebook news feed or in Instagram is one strategy that we're using. We like to rely on past registration and participation lists so that if we have a property in a certain location where we recently had a sale within the past few weeks, then we may go directly back to that registration list, call and or email all those people on the list. Then there are also certainly other venues we can utilize. Print media historically has been an important part of auctions. That would be newspapers. In this market context, it really depends on the product type as to whether the newspaper or what types of newspapers might make sense. And then beyond that, we certainly have it on our own in-house website. We're going to have it in direct mail and email lists, and we also utilize some auction databases like Auction Zip.
So there are a lot of tools in order to get the message out that the property is available.
There's a ton of tools. We want to find where the buyers are. And so obviously where the buyers once upon a time all read the newspaper for auction listings may not be the case anymore, but they very well may be looking at Facebook or Instagram or on those syndicated sites that I mentioned. So having a presence in all of those places helps ensure that we get the result and the turnout that we want.
Excellent. Susie, I'm going to come back to you. Let's talk about, we've done all this work. We've signed the listing agreement. We've prepped, done all this marketing. It's auction day. Where does the auction take place and what can people expect?
So auction day is my favorite day. Here again, look at the property. It may be an online auction. So they may have already registered and they're bidding in their pajamas at home or at work or things like that. Or it could be a simulcast auction where some people are bidding online and some people are bidding live. Or it can be a live auction where everybody shows up, and to register, we're usually there an hour before bidding starts. And you come up to find us, you bring your ID, your certified fund. We get you a bidder. You sign that you agree to the terms and conditions of the sale, and then bidding starts at a designated time.
Okay. And bidding takes as long as it takes until somebody finally gets the best price, I guess, huh?
That's correct. It's pretty quick.
Charles, I'm going to come back to you now. So if people want to use an auction house, I mean, one of the questions they're going to say is, how do I select it? So, how do they, what should they look for in an auction house in order to make a good decision?
So not unlike any vendor that you may choose, you want to make sure that they handle the subject matter at hand. So, you wouldn't look for a commercial plumber to fix the sink in your house. Similarly, with an auctioneer, you want to make sure that there's somebody who focuses on real estate, and not just real estate in general, the type of real estate that you have and the location of the real estate that you have. So that there are auctioneers out there of all kinds who handle all sorts of products, and some of them are specialists in certain products and others they are not. For us, we really only do real estate. And so you certainly want to focus on those companies that handle either entirely or predominantly real estate for their sales. They're going to have the expertise that you're looking for.
Susie, I come back to you for a moment to answer that same question, though. And what should somebody look for in order to make a good decision about the selection of an auction house to auction off their real estate?
Yeah, I can echo what Charles said. If it's real estate, you want to stick with an auctioneer that does real estate. That's what their expertise is. They belong to the local MLS, maybe a national MLS as well. Those are coming. And you want to check out their website, check out their credentials. You want to ask for references. Who could they call and speak with? You're going to ask for case studies. Have you done something like my situation? And when that happened, what happened? Tell us what happened then. Ask lots of questions. Call and talk to the staff that answers the phone. That will tell you a lot right from the get-go.
So I want to stay on this topic, though, because you guys have done a lot of auctions of real estate over the course of your careers. So I'm going to come back to you, Charles. Tell me about some of the problems that you've seen on the sale of real estate through an auction that you want to share with our viewers.
For specific problems, I mean, I think you run into circumstances with buyers who really haven't done their homework occasionally, and we really make a proactive effort to reach out to those who have registered in advance and speak with those who register on site at the auctions to make sure that they're aware of what's going on, not only with the property, but with the terms of sale at large. So part of it is, individuals. And then part of it, in some cases, is the product type itself. Susie addressed what types of properties may not be ideal for auction. And part of that is going to involve certain types of products where the bulk of the buyer pool need more contingencies. And that may be where there are FHA or VA buyers that the financing itself requires a more robust inspection and repair facilitation than an auction does. So, part of it may be product type, part of it may be personnel, but I think a responsible auctioneer is going to give the seller the feedback in advance as far as what those problems may be. And I know for us, and I would suspect for Susie, if we're presented with a product type or a circumstance that we just don't feel is going to work, we're going to tell the seller that. There's no advantage for us to put up a property that has a low chance of success.
Okay. Susie, I'm going to come back to you for that same question. If you can share with our viewers some of the experiences you've had as an auctioneer in trying to sell real estate, the problems you might have encountered that create issues for you in doing the job you want to do.
Yeah, Charles hit the nail on the head. It starts with prep with your seller, and not every property is an auction property. And I want to tell that seller before we even sign the listing agreement. And then the next phase is when we're inquiring with buyers that are interested. They may have questions that come up and tell you something about the property that you don't know. So it's addressing those questions and problems with the seller prior to the auction. And then, like Charles said, every once in a while, you have some buyers that show up and don't have any idea what the terms are, or the property. They just like a good auction. And sometimes we want to be sure that they're really ready.
So certainly it would seem if they're, in order to be ready, they have to have a very large cashier's check. I would hope that that would slow down the flow through the front door, but maybe not. So, well, we're kind of coming to towards the end of this particular program. And I want to take the time, though, for each of you to take some time and give us some final thoughts and words of advice, some practical suggestions about when and how to use auction as a tool to sell real estate. And Charles, I'm going to come back to you first.
Thanks, Richard. And I think exactly what you mentioned is right. It is a tool. Much like any toolbox, you're going to have several different types of tools in there that are appropriate for the right job. And an auction is one of those tools that really makes sense for the right circumstance and for the right product. And so the responsibility is on the seller to investigate all of their options. I think there are a lot of preconceived notions out there about real estate sales in general. Some of those are applicable to traditional listing agents. Some of those are applicable to auctioneers. But really, it's most important to find out who the vendor that you would like to handle the property, if they're able to actually address the circumstances that you have and the product type that you have. So what Susie mentioned is correct. Ask a lot of questions, certainly do your research, see if it's a product type or a location that they've handled in the past, and reach out to them. You know, in most cases, people will do a lot of online research before they actually reach out and touch base with the vendor, and I think that has value, but at some point you're better off hearing it from the horse's mouth, and there may be different variations on your circumstance than the broad strokes of what may be advertised on an individual auctioneer's website. So short version, an auction is an option for the right circumstance, and do your homework.
Susie, how about yourself? Can you share some final thoughts, advice, recommendations, words of warning for our viewers?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. And I use the same analogy that sales has used and you've used for a tool in your toolbox. So you want to pick a hammer to hit a nail. So you want to pick an auction property and you want to match that with an auction. So I don't think there's anything different than what Carl said. Do your research. Give us a phone call. And we're going to help you through the process.
Very good.
We'll even say no if it's not the right situation.
Well, I want to thank both of you for your time and sharing your expertise. It's very valuable and a great service to our community, and I want to thank you both for taking the time to do so today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate you having me on.
You're very welcome. You know, selling real estate in a conservatorship or an estate presents potentially conflicting objectives. On the one hand, you want to maximize the sales proceeds netted. But on the other hand, you do not want to be left holding and maintaining a property for months on end. One tool that may assist you with both objectives is to sell the real estate in an auction. However, an auction does not happen so easily, and we learned that not all properties are good candidates to be auctioned. But we also learned that it is a bona fide tool, and if handled by professionals with experience, you may have a solution to that balance you seek between maximizing price without being saddled with an extended holding period. So if you need to sell real estate from an estate or a conservatorship, we encourage you to consult with auctioneer professionals to explore this tool. This brings us to the conclusion of our show this evening on auction of real estate. We hope you found it helpful. Replays of this show and all the shows broadcast to date, along with the other helpful information, can be viewed on the Probate Nation website. On behalf of the Probate Nation, thank you for visiting with us.